Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. I transmigrated into a book and became the supporting female character. The story's heroine, a woman who seemed harmless, gentle, and indifferent to worldly affairs, managed to climb from the lowest rungs of society to the throne of the Empress. In contrast, I, the original villainess, plotted and schemed with all my might, only to end in miserable failure. I was abandoned by everyone, and even the man I shared a bed with showed me no pity. In the end, my head rolled. When I first arrived in this world, she was still just a lowly maidservant by my side. Yet my husband, Zhou Ling, confronted me time and again for her sake, not even bothering to hide his favoritism. I smirked, my voice cold. If you value her so much, then just take her into your mansion. But once she steps into the rear courtyard as your concubine, she can forget about ever dreaming of becoming the mother of the nation. And now, let the story begin. The bad news: I died in a traffic accident. The good news: I transmigrated into a book. The even worse news: I became the villainous supporting character. My body was burning, and my head throbbed as if being split by an axe. After absorbing most of the original owner's memories, I gradually came to my senses. My throat was so dry it felt like it was on fire. I tried to move, to part my lips and speak, but my voice was weak and broken. Water. Zhou Ling froze, then a look of ecstatic relief washed over his face. He rushed to my side in 3 short steps and gripped my hand tightly. Madam, you're awake. I couldn't be bothered with him. All I wanted was water. I had fallen into the lake, and it was all because of the female lead, Xianxia. At this point in the story, she was still just a maid under my command. That day, I took Xianxia to a banquet, where we happened upon a scene where the male lead, Gu Jingyang, was being bullied. The emperor was a decisive and ruthless man, which was why Gu Jingyang was still just an ostracized prince. His mother had been a mere laundry maid in the palace, with no connections and a lowly status. The other princes took pleasure in tormenting him. That day, the third prince, having just been reprimanded by the emperor, took out his anger on Gu Jingyang, ordering a young eunuch to push him into the lake. And so, without a moment's hesitation, the female lead jumped in to save him. She managed to pull Gu Jingyang ashore, but they both tumbled to the ground in a suggestive position. Their eyes met, their breaths mingled, and in that single instant, a spark of love was ignited. But it was a disaster for me. In her heroic act, Xianxia had accidentally kicked me into the lake, which was still covered in a thin layer of ice. The water was bone-chilling. As a result, after returning to the manor, I was unconscious for 2 full days. Zhou Ling squeezed my hand, his voice thick with worry. Madam. I frowned slightly. Water. Madam, that girl Xuelin is still kneeling in the courtyard, he said. Water. She says she won't get up until you awaken. No one can persuade her. Water. It's so cold out, how can she bear it? Madam, please allow her to stand. Don't punish her anymore. She didn't do it on purpose. At that moment, I truly wanted to slap him. But then I remembered I had been bedridden for 2 days without a single drop of water. I didn't even have the strength to lift my hand. Outside in the courtyard, maids and servants crowded the doorway, their eyes filled with pity as they looked towards the female lead. Ah, so this was the heroine's halo. All she had to do was offer a piece of candy or a single flower, and she could become the light in their dark lives, inspiring them to brave fire and water, even to sacrifice their lives for her. Just like my husband, Zhou Ling, I managed every affair in his household, big and small, but he thought I was merely busy with trivial, mundane matters. I helped him strategize and curry favor with his superiors, but he scorned me for being a sycophant. And yet, he complained about his hardships while steadily climbing the ranks and spending money without a second thought. When he developed diabetes, I had to control his diet, forbidding him from touching any sweets. But the female lead, she would secretly slip him a piece of fruit candy. Those candies, along with her gentle smile, became the only sweetness in his bitter life. For that little bit of sweetness, he willingly stood behind Xianxia, helping her guide the male lead to the pinnacle of power. My maternal cousin was the reigning 5th prince. After he failed in his bid for the throne, he believed I had betrayed him. Before he died, he sent men to cut off one of my legs. Madam, let me help you up. If Xuelin continues to kneel, her knees will be ruined. Zhou Ling half pulled, half carried me from the bed. He didn't even bother to put a cloak on me before dragging me straight outside. The room was heated by an underfloor system, and I was only wearing a thin layer of silk. Outside, snow was falling heavily, But he didn't care if I froze to death. Pulled along by him, my legs were weak, my feet feeling like they were treading on cotton. The moment the thick curtain was lifted, a blast of icy wind hit my face, making me shiver. Zhang Shelin was still kneeling ramrod straight before the door. The sky was gloomy, and snowflakes fell silently, blanketing the black roof tiles in white, painting a tranquil scene. Amidst the snow, a young woman stood in a white fox fur cloak. Her figure was slender, her face as beautiful as a painting. She was like a proud orchid blooming in a desolate valley, independent and radiant, making everything around her a mere backdrop to her beauty. The scene was like a perfect painting. But that fur cloak, why did it look so familiar? Oh, wasn't that the birthday gift my cousin had specially sent from the northern frontier? White fox fur was incredibly rare, each pelt was worth 1,000 gold pieces. Seeing me, Zhang Shelin swayed slightly. Her eyes were hazy, her voice trembling. Madam, you've finally come to see this servant. Her face was pale, her delicate frame looking as if a gust of wind could topple her. The sight immediately wrung Zhou Ling's heart. He let go of my arm without a second thought and rushed forward to support her. The surrounding maids and servants also cried out in alarm, as if the world would collapse if she fell. As for me, I was already weak. The moment Zhou Ling let go, my body gave out. I stumbled sideways, desperately clutching the doorframe to keep from falling. I finally couldn't hold it in any longer and snarled, "You worthless slaves. Are you not going to help me up?" The maids and servants around me froze, their faces turning pale as if they'd seen a ghost. It was only then that they snapped out of it, rushing to help me back into the room. A flurry of chaos ensued. Some poured tea, some brewed medicine, some served porridge, bustling back and forth. In the end, half the maids stayed to care for me, while the other half were dragged away to be punished. I drank 2 bowls of porridge and a cup of ginger tea. My body slowly recovered, and the soreness in my throat eased. I raised my hand slightly, signaling for Chunyan, my personal maid, to bring Zhang Shelin here. Chunyan looked at me with a frightened expression. Madam, didn't you already forgive Zealand? Indeed, these people were masters of their own narratives. I hadn't even opened my mouth, yet Zhang Shelin had already decided I had magnanimously let her off. Before long, a group of people bustled in, surrounding her. They escorted her directly into the room. Zhou Ling had rushed out to personally fetch a physician. An outsider might have thought she was the true lady of the manor. Seeing my silence and furrowed brow, Chunyan boldly spoke up. Madame Swellen has been kneeling for 2 days and can barely stand. Besides, the master specifically instructed that she should rest well and not be disturbed. I looked up at Chunyan, a cold smile playing on my lips. Was she using Zhou Ling to threaten me? My temples throbbed. If she can't stand, have someone carry her here, I said coldly. If Zhang Zielin's face isn't in front of me within the next 15 minutes, you can go to Metrongai and receive 30 strikes of the rod yourself. Chunyan gasped, her eyes wide with terror. I gave a chilling laugh. Now, get out. Zhang Shelin was supported into the room, her face pale, looking both weak and pitiful. Upon seeing me, she immediately knelt, her almond-shaped eyes shimmering with unshed tears, her voice choked with emotion. Madam, do you still wish to forgive this servant? I frowned, finding her more and more irritating. It was no surprise. She was still wearing that fox fur cloak, the one I distinctly remembered Zhou Ling draping over her shoulders himself. Zhang Shelin had no intention of getting up. She simply continued to plead. If Madam cannot forgive me, this servant will continue to kneel until your anger subsides. A scene from the novel flashed through my mind. I had been unconscious for 2 days, and she had knelt for exactly 2 days. That was why she couldn't stand properly now. Gu Jingyang, the male lead, was a possessive man, his heart filled with resentment, gloom, and a cruel ruthlessness. His only shred of gentleness in this world is reserved for Zhang Shelin. He held a grudge against me for harming her. So, after he seized power, he bestowed countless concubines upon Zhou Ling. These women were of noble birth, imperial gifts, and each one looked down on me, causing trouble in the manor day after day. Gu Jingyang even reprimanded me in the middle of the street, accusing me of being unvirtuous, malicious, and lacking in talent and morals, turning me into the laughingstock of the capital. Thinking of that tragic end, a wave of resentment surged through me. I clenched my jaw so tightly my teeth made a grinding sound. I walked over and ripped the fox fur cloak from Zhang Shulin's body. You want my forgiveness? It's not difficult, I said coolly. Men, throw her into the lake for me. Zhang Shulin's entire body trembled. She blurted out, you can't. Oh, according to the novel, despite my anger at Zhang Shelin, I was still mindful of Zhou Ling, not wanting to strain our already fragile relationship over a trivial matter. So after waking up, I only punished her with a 2-month salary deduction and didn't make a big deal of it. How could she have known that in advance? There was only one possibility: she was reborn. How interesting. A transmigrator facing off against a reborn female lead. I wondered if she could maintain her calm, indifferent, above the fray demeanor this time. I stared at Zhang Yilin slowly stepping forward to lift her chin. Such a pretty little face. My voice was a soft whisper. What a pity. A flicker of fear crossed her eyes. She glanced at Chunyin as if giving a signal. Chunyin immediately stepped back, seemingly about to run outside and call for help. Stay where you are. I snapped. I truly couldn't stand these ungrateful wretches anymore. They ate my food and spent my money, yet a small favor from the female lead was enough to make them turn against me. Chunyin froze in the corner of the room, her eyes pleading. Madam, please spare Seelan. Her body is already weak. How could she survive this? If the master finds out, he will blame you again. Why must you cause yourself this trouble? Such deep sisterly affection. I waved my hand dismissively. Men, throw both Chunyin and her into the lake. Just as Zhou Ling returned with the physician, I was leisurely strolling through the garden, wrapped in my fox fur cloak. Chunyin and Zhang Xuelin were being dragged away by rough-looking servants, their faces pale with terror. Chunyin, in particular, was struggling and wailing, Madam, have mercy. Xuelin's health is poor. If she falls into the lake in this snowy weather, I fear she won't survive. Zhang Xuelin kept her head down, her eyes glistening with tears, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. Seeing this, the surrounding maids and servants couldn't help but feel sorry for them, their expressions dark. Madam. One of the maids started to speak, but a single sharp glance from me silenced her. Anyone who wishes to plead for them can be thrown into the lake in their place, I announced. Chunyin's face instantly went white. Her hands fell limp, and she stopped struggling. In contrast, Jiang Shulin suddenly lifted her head and said calmly, Madam, yesterday the 9th Prince sent a messenger to inform us that he will be visiting tomorrow. The 9th Prince, Gu Jingyang, the male lead of the novel. In the story, Zhang Xuelin was always serene and composed. Even when falsely accused, she would simply say, the innocent need no defense. I have nothing to explain. She was never anxious, never panicked, because there was always someone else to cry and beg on her behalf, like Chunyin. Chunyin was once caught passing information to her, and was punished by me so severely that she developed a high fever and died in the night. Jiang Xilin showed no resentment, only sighing softly. She even personally arranged the funeral, preparing a coffin of the finest mahogany. Everyone who witnessed her kindness and generosity became even more devoted to her. A bunch of fools. Thinking of this, an idea sparked in my mind. Since Chunyin has stepped forward to plead for Zhang Xuelin, I declared, then there is no need to punish her. Men, release Zhang Xuelin. Throw Chunyin into the lake. Zhang Xuelin and Chunyin were both stunned. But in a flash, Jiang Xuelin regained her usual indifference. She didn't say a single word to defend Chunyin, merely bowing her head and stepping aside. Chunyin bit her lip, her eyes fixed on Zhang Xuelin, her expression dark and complicated. Stop, you vicious woman. Zhou Ling had come from a prestigious family and always valued propriety, yet time and again, he lost his composure to defend Jiang Xuelin. This time was no exception. He ran over, panting, so hastily that the jade pin in his hair was askew. He spread his arms to shield her, his eyes blazing with fury. All she did was try to save someone. What's wrong with that? You made her kneel in the snow for 2 days. Even a man of iron couldn't endure that. Do you want her dead? How ridiculous. I was the one unconscious, and Zhang Xuelin chose to kneel on her own, yet one after another, they pinned the blame on me. I looked at Zhou Ling coldly, my heart burning with indignation for the original character of this novel. For this man, for this family, she had exhausted herself her entire life, only to end up being dismembered by 5 horses. When she died, the man she had always trusted didn't even shed a single tear.
Oh, that's right.
When Zhang Xuelin had a difficult childbirth, he was the one who broke down in tears. Zhou Ling was still catching his breath, his chest heaving. His body was naturally weak, and running so quickly had left him breathless. His handsome face was flushed, his hair disheveled, and his thin lips were pale, giving him a strange allure. He was indeed very handsome. No wonder the original character was so infatuated. I frowned, looking at him coldly. I am disciplining Chunyin. Do you intend to interfere with that as well? Hearing that the one about to be thrown into the lake was Chunyin, Zhou Ling immediately retracted his hands. He stood up straight, and in an instant, he had resumed his aloof, indifferent demeanor. "Just be careful not to cause a death," he said. Then, he turned to Zhang Zelen, his voice full of concern. "It's freezing in the winter. Don't stand out here for too long, or you'll damage your knees. I've brought the physician. Go back to your room and rest." Zhang Xulan nodded slightly and walked away, surrounded by a throng of servants. Only Chunyan was left standing alone by the lake, looking utterly weak and helpless in the biting winter cold. I raised an eyebrow, looking at her coolly. "Will you jump yourself, or should I have someone throw you in?" Chunyan took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and jumped into the lake. The water wasn't deep, only up to her head. By standing on her toes, she could still keep her head above the surface. I stood on the bank, watching her silently. Falling into a freezing lake in the middle of winter, it wasn't a pleasant feeling, was it? You concealed everything for Zhang Shilan's sake, only to be abandoned by her time and again. I wonder, after this, will you still be as willing to sell your life for her as you were in your past life? Friendship must be a two-way street. If only one side gives their all, that isn't loyalty, it's stupidity. This is a lesson I will teach you slowly. After taking her medicine, Zhang Zelen slept soundly until morning, her face peaceful as if nothing had happened. Chunyan, however, was not so lucky. She developed a high fever and fell unconscious. I ordered the maids to pinch her nose and force the medicine down, and only then did her fever temporarily subside. When she woke up, Chunyan stared intently at the door, her eyes filled with disappointment. Seeing me enter, she quickly averted her gaze, her breathings weak. "Madam." I glanced at her, my tone sharp. "What, are you waiting for Zhang Xulan?" Chunyan clutched the blanket, her eyelashes trembling, but she remained silent. I chuckled softly, patting her hand. "Now do you understand why I had to punish her? She is my servant, yet she failed to protect her mistress. She pushed me into the lake for someone else. Whether it was intentional or not, it was a betrayal. According to the rules of this manor, those who betray their masters for personal gain are, at best, sold off. At worst, they are beaten to death." Chunyan's face turned pale. She shook her head desperately, her voice hoarse. Zhang Xulan didn't mean it. She just wanted to save someone. I looked at her, slowly pulling the blanket up and gently wiping the sweat from her forehead with a handkerchief. "You had the kindness to plead for her, but did she say a single word for you? Last night, you had a high fever. It was I who called the physician, and I who had people watch over you all night. And what about your good sister? She slept soundly until morning, and upon waking, she dressed up beautifully and went happily to see the 9th prince." The light in Chunyan's eyes gradually faded, replaced by visible disappointment and sorrow. In the novel, Zhou Ling always believed that Zhang Xulan had feelings for him. He thought that because of her low status, she couldn't refuse the 9th prince. He was convinced that no matter what, her feelings were sincere, because she was gentle and kind by nature, and had no reason to betray him. He believed they were like the coward and the weaver girl, separated only by power and worldly conventions. I decided to shatter this fanciful illusion. "What did you say?" Zhou Ling grabbed my shoulders excitedly, his eyes shining with anticipation. I pushed his hands away, rubbing my shoulder and smiling faintly. "What's wrong? You don't want to? I thought you liked Zhang Xulan." Zhou Ling nodded vigorously, as if he'd had an epiphany. "Of course I'm happy. I simply admire her noble character, as elegant as an orchid. She agreed for me to take her as a concubine." I looked at him, deliberately feigning a lonely expression, and sighed softly. "My dear husband, I always want to give you the best things in the world. You understand that, don't you? Rest assured, I will absolutely not let Zhang Xulan be wrong. Although she is just a maid I bought for 5 taels of silver, I will still elevate her to the status of a concubine. According to the rules, a concubine is a person of good standing and cannot be sold at will. She has the right to raise her own children, her status second only to the primary wife." Zhou Ling was so moved he was speechless. He immediately pulled me into a tight embrace and showered me with kisses. I was utterly disgusted but had to maintain a happy expression. "Zhao Zhao, I misunderstood you before." His voice was full of gratitude. "You truly have my best interests at heart." Zhang Xuan was momentarily stunned, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and fear. "Madam, what are you saying?" I just smiled faintly and shook my head, my tone teasing. "This silly girl is so happy she's become foolish. All right, I know you've long admired the master. Didn't I promise to ensure you would be treated with dignity and not be wronged?" Zhang Xuelin's face instantly turned pale, her usual indifferent demeanor completely gone. she stammered, her voice trembling. "Madam, this servant does not wish to be a concubine." Behind the screen, the person standing there held their breath. Then they took a deep one. I feigned surprise, my eyes twinkling with amusement as if I had just discovered something. "A few days ago, Kyuju told me she greatly admires the master. She didn't ask to be a concubine, only hoped to be a chamber maid. If not even that, she said just being by his side to serve tea would be enough to make her content. I thought you and Kyuju both admired the master. Could it be? I was mistaken. You don't like the master at all." I deliberately fabricated these words, causing Jing Shilin to look flustered. Kyuju was a maid in my chambers and also her closest confidant in the novel. She was infatuated with Zhou Ling, and after Zheng Zhuilin convinced him to take Kyuju as a concubine, she was moved to tears. It was this same Kyuju who later helped Jiang Shilin assist the 9th prince, becoming a crucial link in their rebellion. In the novel, my original character's cousin cutting off her leg wasn't entirely without reason. After all, Zhou Ling was his brother-in-law, a trusted member of the family. Who would have thought that his own sister would betray her own clan? There were only two possibilities: either the original character truly betrayed him, or she was incredibly foolish. Her brother never thought she was a fool, so he was convinced he had been betrayed. I touched my right thigh, my heart aching. The Qin Jiazhao in the novel was never stupid, but so what? The author favored the female lead, giving her golden finger to overcome any obstacle. Until now, Jiang Shilin still didn't know that Zhou Ling was hiding behind the screen. Honestly, I felt her rebirth this time wasn't helping her much. Born into a humble family, sold by her parents to be a maid, the moment she set foot in the capital, she fell into my hands. With her heroine's halo, she never truly suffered. There were always countless outstanding men who adored her, competing to offer her their hearts. She won without even trying, like a game that was rigged from the start. The one who suffered the greatest loss in the end was always the original character. According to the original plot, Jiang Shulin was just a lowly maid by my side, constantly mocked and despised by me. After becoming empress, she couldn't escape criticism for her humble origins. Jiang Shulin wasn't Gu Jingyang's first empress, but his second. At the time, to gain the support of the great families, he had married the daughter of the Wang family as his primary wife. The crown prince was also her son. Later, when Gu Jingyang took the throne, the court was thrown into turmoil. But as with any rigged game, the main character was still the final victor. It's just that in the history books, these events left an indelible stain on his legacy. If I were Jiang Shulin, given a second chance at life, my biggest goal would undoubtedly be to become Gu Jingyang's primary wife. The mere thought of it made my breath quicken. A thin layer of sweat formed on my back. A maid becoming empress was already criticized by the court officials. So what if she was just a concubine? Just imagining that scene, I couldn't help but feel a thrill. The foolish Zhou Ling was as loyal to Jiang Xiaolin as a dog, and because of that, he basked in her reflected glory. My ending was tragic, but his career soared. From a nobody, he became a man of status. Gu Jingyang, out of respect for Jiang Shulin, showed him considerable favor. But what if she became Zhou Ling's concubine? With Gu Jingyang's personality, forget about promotions, I'm afraid he'd be castrated and made a eunuch. No, I must make this happen. Madam, Jiang Shuelin's eyes lit up as if she'd thought of the perfect excuse to refuse. Unfortunately, I wasn't going to give her the chance to speak. No need to say anything, I understand completely. I interrupted, my voice gentle but laden with meaning. Rest assured. We are all women, I know what you're thinking. You may leave. I have other matters to attend to. Jiang Shilin's eyes widened, her mouth agape, looking like a complete fool. Madam, this servant hasn't said. I gently raised a finger to her lips. No need to speak. I understand everything. With me here, you have nothing to worry about. The maids in the manor immediately dragged her out. Jiang Suelin unwillingly kept looking back, her voice echoing through the corridor. Madam, I'll. After a few beatings, the maids in the manor had become much more efficient. In the past, they might have hesitated, waiting for her to finish. What sisterly bond? A few good beatings would see how long that lasted. Zhou Ling walked out from behind the screen in a daze, his handsome face etched with sorrow. Madam, perhaps we should just forget it. If Shulin is unwilling, we shouldn't force her. I slapped him hard on the shoulder, making him stumble. Husband, what are you saying? What young lady wouldn't be overjoyed to hear she's being made a concubine? Swilin is simply being shy. Don't you understand? I deliberately sighed, my tone a mix of understanding and helplessness. When my parents asked who I wanted to marry, I also said I didn't want to get married, that I only wanted to serve them my whole life. But what happened? Didn't I still marry you? Oh, the thoughts of a young maiden. Others may not understand, but I understand perfectly. Zhou Ling stared at me, a joyous light dawning in his eyes. Really, you're saying, Swellen, she's truly willing. I fanned my face with a handkerchief, glancing at him with mock exasperation. Husband, why do you think so little of yourself? You come from a prestigious family, you are dignified and talented, you passed the imperial examinations at a young age, and you currently work at the Hanlin Academy. No matter how proud Sulan is, she's just a common girl. To be noticed by you is her great fortune. She couldn't be more eager to have you, how could she possibly be unwilling? Zhou Ling smiled, a smile so radiant that even his back seemed to glow with happiness. I wonder if he'll still be smiling when Gu Jingyang holds a knife to his throat. After seeing him out, I immediately sent for Kyuju. Go and tidy up the Haitong courtyard, then, open the storeroom. I want to personally select some fine items. Kyuju froze for a moment, then clenched her handkerchief, her voice somewhat hesitant. Madam, are we having esteemed guests in the manor? Zhou Ling and I had been married for 2 years, and there had never been a single concubine or bed chamber maid in the manor. In the novel, Qin Zhazhao was always on guard against the maids, treating them like thieves, afraid they would seduce Zhou Ling. Kyuju was one of them. She was hopelessly infatuated with Zhou Ling, so she always saw me as a rival. I really wanted to see how she would react when her close sister suddenly became her adversary. Surprise or delight. Biting my lip, I suppressed a smile and put on a sorrowful expression. The master has taken a liking to Zhang Xulan and wants to take her as a concubine. He has instructed me repeatedly, saying she is the most important person in his heart and that she must not be neglected in any way. The other maids aren't meticulous enough, only you are trustworthy. I feel at ease in trusting this matter to you. Taking a concubine is a major event. The master wants to hold a grand ceremony so as not to lose face. I still have to arrange the guest list, instruct the kitchen. Oh, there's so much to do. I said a lot, each and every word emphasizing one thing. Zhou Ling loved Zhang Sulan so much he wished he could pluck the moon from the sky for her. And as for me, the dignified primary wife, I could only stand by and watch. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and prepare. Kyuju's expression was truly a sight to behold. First, she was stunned, then doubtful and disbelieving, then crestfallen, heartbroken, jealous, and resentful. Kyuju, are you listening to me? She snapped back to reality, her eyes already misty. She bowed her head, her gaze darkening, biting her lip as if trying to swallow all her grievances. Madam, this servant is slow-witted. I'm afraid I can't remember everything. Could madam repeat it one more time? This servant will be sure to remember it well. Looking like a lost soul, Kyuju stumbled over the threshold and carelessly tripped, falling flat on her face with a thud. Her knee slammed into the stone step, scraping it and drawing blood. She clutched her leg, tears streaming down her face, sobbing, "Oh, it hurts so much. Oh dear." I'm sure her heart hurt more than her leg. But I couldn't get complacent just yet. Based on my experience, this world always found a way to force events back onto their original track. The female lead's golden finger wasn't just for show. I deliberately instructed a maid to whisper the news to the household's biggest gossips to ensure it spread quickly. Then, I took up a brush and wrote a stack of invitations, sending them to Zhou Ling's friends and colleagues. The invitation clearly stated Zhou Ling sincerely loves a maid in his household. Though she comes from a rural background, her character is as noble as an orchid and as serene as a chrysanthemum. She is dignified and well-mannered. It was love at first sight, their fates sealed with a single glance. One would take no other concubine but her, one would marry no other man but him. Zhou Ling has decided to take her as his concubine and cordially invites his friends to raise a glass in celebration. After sending out the invitations, I immediately rode to the busiest and most prosperous district in the capital. It was a paradise for merchants and nobles, with countless people coming and going every day. I made a grand spectacle, going from jewelry shops to fabric stores to antique shops. Whatever caught my eye, I had my servants buy it all up. Bolts of silk, baskets of jade and gems, everything was loaded onto carriages, forming a long procession. People carrying goods, people pulling carts. It was a bustling, magnificent sight that snaked its way back to our manor, creating an unprecedented commotion. Such a huge spectacle, of course, immediately attracted the attention of the people on the street. The idle and curious couldn't help but gather to watch. Look, Isn't that the carriage of Academician Zhou? Is there some happy occasion at the Zhou family? Didn't Academician Zhou just get married 2 years ago? That's right, I heard he married the daughter of Minister Qun, a devastatingly beautiful young lady. Amidst the crowd, a tall man with a square face laughed heartily and walked forward, cupping his hands in greeting. Madame Zhou, is there some happy event at your manor? I knew this man. He was a notorious rogue in this area, Zhao Qi. He had an uncle who was a commander of the city guard for 5 districts, which was why he could strut around without anyone daring to touch him. I straightened my back and gave him a formal nod of greeting. This was the first time a noble lady from a prestigious family had shown him such courtesy. Zhao Qi was so startled he dropped the blade of grass he was chewing and quickly stood up straight, looking a bit flustered. Indeed, there is a happy occasion at my manor. I smiled, my tone calm. My husband wishes to take a young maid as a concubine, so I came out personally to prepare the betrothal gifts. The Zhou family will be holding a grand banquet to entertain guests. If young Master Zhao has the time, please do come for a celebratory drink. Zhao Qi awkwardly returned the courtesy, but when he processed my words, his expression immediately soured. Madame Zhou is so virtuous, yet Master Zhou still wants to take a concubine. It's just a concubine, yet he's making such a big fuss and even throwing a banquet. He snorted coldly. Isn't that just a slap in the face to the primary wife? I smiled faintly, deliberately putting on a look of resignation. Young Master Zhao jests. Managing the household affairs is my duty. How would I dare have an opinion? Zhou Qiu pursed his lips, his narrow eyes flashing with indignation. What's the background of that little maid? Was she a gift from a superior official? I shook my head. She is just a commoner, all alone in this capital city. Zhao Qi seemed to have an epiphany and sneered. Master Zhou doesn't have a son yet. I suppose the mother is gaining status through the child. I bit my lip, a flicker of panic in my eyes, as if I were desperately trying to hide something. Young Master Zhao, this concerns the reputation of a young maiden. Please, watch your words. By the time I returned to the manor with my retinue of servants, even the gatekeeper had heard the rumor. People were whispering that Zhang Shuilin was pregnant with Zhou Ling's child, which was why he was in such a hurry to take her as a concubine. Indeed, nothing in this world spreads faster than rumors. In the novel, when Zhang Shuilin became empress, she was also very skilled at using this tactic to deal with the original character. I remembered clearly one incident where the original character accidentally bumped into a palace guard. Zhang Shuilin immediately feigned innocence, exclaiming in front of a group of noble ladies, "Oh, I didn't see Madame Zhou and the guard embracing at all. I really saw nothing." Just one ambiguous sentence was enough to draw countless looks of pity and contempt towards the original character. Another time, the original character dropped her handkerchief. A eunuch picked it up and returned it to her. Zhang Shuilin immediately snatched the handkerchief from the eunuch's hand, exclaiming in surprise, "This peony, embroidered handkerchief looks so familiar. Isn't this Madame Zhou's?" Then she turned to the original character, her eyes full of apology. "My apologies, Madame Zhou, I really shouldn't have. The two of you won't blame me, will you?" Her words were vague, her expression pitiful, but it put the original character in a position where she couldn't defend herself. One was a dignified, pure, and noble empress, the other was labeled a promiscuous and willful woman. The contrast was so stark that people didn't hesitate to decide who was right and who was wrong. Her supporters all believed that I was not only promiscuous but also dared to bully the empress herself. Zhang Shuilin didn't need to say much. The original character was already drowned in a storm of gossip. She always kept her own hands clean, yet she trampled on countless innocent souls. Zhou Ling already disliked the original character, and after being instigated by Zhang Shuilin, his disgust only grew. For more than a decade, the original character was confined to an empty room, enduring coldness and contempt, night after night, lonely and without a friend. It wasn't until she was dismembered by Gu Jingyang in the public square that she was truly liberated. Her life of treading on thin ice had finally come to an end. When I stepped into the courtyard, Zhang Shuilin was standing with her back to Zhou Ling, her shoulders trembling, tears streaming down her face. "I'm fine, master, don't worry. The innocent will be proven innocent. I believe madam. She certainly didn't mean to speak of me that way." Zhou Ling was both heartbroken and furious. Qin Zhazhao has done such a shameless thing. This is unforgivable. Sullen, don't cry anymore. I will send people to explain to everyone. You are an innocent young woman. How can you endure such rumors? Indeed, the adulterous couple, the scummy man and the wretched woman, a match made in heaven. In that case, they should just stay together and never be separated. I flicked my handkerchief dramatically, tears welling in my eyes, and rushed towards Zhou Ling. Master, something terrible has happened. What should we do? Although I had always treated him well, his personality was extremely stubborn and not easily swayed. So this time, I couldn't be as gentle as before. Zhou Ling immediately believed my words. Not only did he not blame me, but he also comforted me in a soft voice. It's all right, you only had good intentions. It was just an unintentional mistake. Those idle thugs have never known how to hold their tongues. They're only good at causing trouble. He patted his chest, assuring me, I will definitely send people to investigate this matter thoroughly. Zhou Ling truly was a fool. If no one addressed these kinds of rumors, they would eventually die down. But once you try to explain, it's like adding fuel to the fire. It only makes things more chaotic. It was time for Zhang Zhilan to get a taste of her own medicine. As they say, what goes around, comes around. I sent people to use power and influence to threaten those idle gossips, forbidding them from speaking nonsense. But in this capital, who didn't have relatives working as officials? Forget a 7th rank editor at the Hanlin Academy. Even the Prime Minister couldn't silence the tongues of the masses. Those gossips were all getting on in years, and being suppressed like this naturally bred resentment, making them even more eager to talk. In just a day or two, even my cousin had heard about it and came to my door to vent my anger for me. Master Zhou, you truly are greedy. You'll take anything. A mere maid, and you're taking her as a concubine. Do you think my Zhao is easy to bully? Besides, even if she is pregnant, are you sure the child is yours? My cousin was young and talented, dressed in a purple robe and a golden coronet, his appearance handsome and his aura noble and imposing. Remembering his past life, where he was hunted down by Gu Jingyang and ended up as a stray dog, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. My cousin had always treated me incredibly well since we were children. My mother and his were close from a young age. In this generation of our clan, only the two of us were left as close blood relatives. Although he was only my cousin, he treated me no differently than a full-blooded sister. In my past life, he was betrayed by Zhou Ling, leading to the execution of hundreds in his household, including his 5-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter. He was gravely injured and hunted everywhere, forced to hide like a rat in the sewers. But even then, he never laid a hand on me. Thinking of his tragic fate, a look of resentment flashed in my eyes. The silk handkerchief in my hand was unconsciously clenched so tightly it crumpled. In this life, I will definitely protect him and help him ascend to the throne. Zhou Ling was both ashamed and angry, the hand holding his teacup trembling slightly. 5th Prince, these are just baseless rumors. I hope you won't be so quick to believe them. My cousin let out a cold laugh, his eyes sweeping over him with contempt. If they are false rumors, then explain why they have spread everywhere. Zhou Ling gritted his teeth, his face grim, so angry he stomped his foot. I truly don't know how to defend myself. I sighed, my face full of worry. Things have gotten so out of hand. Perhaps we should just hold the wedding sooner. If we don't take her as a concubine, won't that just make people believe the rumors even more? My cousin berated him soundly, then forced Zhou Ling to transfer ownership of 2 shops to me before leaving in a huff. The Zhou family was not particularly wealthy. The salary of an editor at the Hanlin Academy was meager. Zhou Ling's parents had passed away early, and he was raised by his uncle. After we married, we moved out on our own. On the surface, he acted noble, but in reality, he was incredibly stingy, always holding on to his money tightly. Each month, he only gave me the bare minimum to run the household. If I wanted to eat a little better, I could only use my own dowry money. According to the original novel, Qin Zhao had subsidized him quite a bit. After being thoroughly scolded by my cousin, Zhou Ling's face was beet red with anger. After my cousin left, he couldn't sit still either. He stood up, intending to leave. I grabbed his sleeve, slowly taking out an account book. My voice was gentle. Husband, this is this month's expense ledger. Please take a look. Zhou Ling frowned, impatiently pulling his hand away. I already gave money to the steward a few days ago, he said coolly. I opened the book, slowly turning the pages, my finger gently pointing to each entry. This is the amount I spent preparing for you to take a concubine. The total is 792 taels of silver. How much? How much did you say? Zhou Ling snatched the book, his hands trembling like someone with a nervous disorder. I tilted my head, looking at him slowly. Didn't you say that everything had to be of the best quality, that we couldn't let Zhang Zelen be wrong? My voice held a hint of confusion, as if I were stating the obvious. This money was also an advance from me. Naturally, you must pay me back. Surely you don't intend to use your primary wife's dowry to take a concubine, do you? Zhou Ling's annual salary was at most around 100 taels of silver. The income from his estate's shops and land taxes amounted to just over 800 taels a year. The annual expenses of the manor were already more than 600 taels. Now, finding out that taking a concubine had cost nearly 5 years of his savings, his vision went dark, and he nearly collapsed. A hypocrite like him valued face above all else. Even if he was boiling with rage, he had to swallow his anger and couldn't refute it. With Zhou Ling's arrogant nature, he would never suspect me of falsifying the accounts. In reality, taking the concubine only cost 302 taels. This time, I not only gained 2 shops but also pocketed 500 taels of silver. I smiled brightly. Looking at Zhang Xuelin, I found her a little more pleasing to the eye. Her life these past few days had not been easy. She was anxious all day, so much so that her face broke out in pimples. Seeing her looking so unsightly, I couldn't help but feel delighted. My voice was gentle. Oh my, what's there to be so tense about? In just 3 more days you'll be a bride. 3 days. Zhang Xuelin shrieked. All the servants in the manor turned their heads in unison, listening with pricked ears as they worked. I glanced at her belly, blinking innocently. What's wrong? Can't you even wait 3 days? Zhang Xuelin had truly been unlucky lately. She was so upset she couldn't eat or sleep well, which caused her stomach to become bloated, making her belly protrude slightly. And she loved to wear tight, fitting clothes, so she really did look 3 months pregnant. During this time, because I had punished people frequently, the servants in the manor had begun to distance themselves from Zhang Xuelin. If anyone dared to be nice to her, I would find an excuse to punish them, either with a fine or a beating. Even a fool knows to come in out of the rain, let alone the shrewd servants of the manor. Chunyan now barely paid any attention to her, and Kyuju considered her a rival. These days had been very difficult for Zhang Xuelin. But the female lead is still the female lead. The power of the plot was stronger than I had imagined. Gu Jingyang was drugged by someone, and just at that moment, Zhang Xuelin went out to offer incense and accidentally saved him. After all, she was the female lead, with a delicate and gentle beauty that was hard to forget. Gu Jingyang felt sorry for her, an innocent wounded by vicious rumors. He sympathized with her greatly. The next day, when he woke up, he personally came to our manor and requested my permission to marry Zhang Xuelin. When Zhou Ling heard this, his eyes rolled back, and he nearly fainted. That same day, the news that the 9th prince wanted to marry Zhou Ling's concubine spread throughout the capital. Memorials flew like snowflakes to the emperor's desk. There were even rumors that the 9th prince was inadequate in a certain aspect, which was why he had to marry a pregnant woman to act as a cover. According to the original novel, Gu Jingyang was indeed disgusted by other young women and was faithful only to the female lead. This part, at least, was consistent with the plot. The emperor already disliked Gu Jingyang. This time, he not only put him under house arrest but also stripped him of his title, demoting him from a prince of the 1st rank to a prince of the 2nd. The supporters who had once flocked to him because of his male lead halo quickly abandoned him and switched their allegiance to my cousin, the 5th prince. In the original novel, Zhou Ling had made great contributions to help him ascend the throne. But now, there was the grudge of a stolen concubine between them. The fact that Zhou Ling hadn't killed him on the spot was already a show of great restraint. To turn the tables and win the support of the major families, Gu Jingyang once again set his sights on the eldest daughter of the Wang family. Twice before he had schemed and arranged a hero saves the damsel scenario, but unfortunately, both times were thwarted by me. He wasn't the only one who could plant spies, so could I. My people reported that Zhang Xuelin had secretly been pouring out her contraceptive medicine. She was now 2 months pregnant, a fact that Gu Jingyang was completely unaware of. In the original story, Zhang Xuelin's life was far too smooth. She was portrayed as calm, virtuous, noble, kind-hearted, lovely, and innocent. Anyone who met her would be conquered by her noble character. Old and young, male and female, everyone loved her as if she were their own. In the male lead's words, she was a celestial fairy descended to earth, pure and untouched by mortal dust, never competing for anything. He wished he could lock her in his manor for his eyes only. After all, a beautiful, non-confrontational and pure as a fairy type of girl was always the favored archetype in novels. However, the kinder the female lead, the more foolish she tends to be. And Zhang Xuelin was a prime example of a fool. In her heart, Gu Jingyang was capable of anything, including seizing the imperial throne. Therefore, the most important thing right now was to become pregnant with his child before any other woman. I waited for a time when Zhang Xuelin went out shopping and had someone deliberately give her a push. She was fine, but I still caused a huge scene and called a physician to examine her. In front of everyone, the doctor, whom I had bribed beforehand, announced that she was pregnant, and that it was a boy. Thanks to Gu Jingyang's reputation, this news spread like wildfire. The third prince and my cousin brought gifts to congratulate them, saying they were for their future nephew. Gu Jingyang, of course, knew the baby was his, but the rampant rumors made him uneasy. His love for Zhang Xuelin was truly deep, so he wouldn't make her terminate the pregnancy. But forget about contending for the throne. Gu Jingyang was now completely shunned by the noble families. According to the original plot, the third prince plotted to usurp the throne, and Gu Jingyang had the merit of saving the emperor. Because of this, he was immediately restored to his princely rank and became the emperor's most beloved and trusted son. After that, he went on a rampage, stepping over the bodies of the other princes to seize the throne. This time, I wanted my cousin to claim the credit that originally belonged to Gu Jingyang. What I didn't expect was that Zhou Ling was still playing the role of an inside man, just like in the original story. Madam, the master has arranged to meet Jean Julin at the tea house in an hour. Fortunately, I had bribed the page boy and personal servants close to Zhou Ling. Upon receiving the news, I immediately sent someone to inform my cousin, then secretly took some people to hide in a private room at the tea house, not forgetting to poke a small hole in the wall. Half an hour later, Zhang Xuelin, wearing a cloak and a veiled hat to conceal her face, quietly entered. As expected of the original female lead, even while pregnant, she was breathtakingly beautiful. If before she was like a proud orchid blooming in a dark valley, now she was like a radiant peony, noble and magnificent. Zhou Ling stared at her, his gaze never leaving her for even a second. Master Zhou, are you well? Zhang Xuelin curtsied gracefully, her voice as light as a breeze. When she looked up, her eyes were already shimmering with tears, like morning dew. Zhou Ling was stunned, as if he had been struck dumb. Zhang Xuelin sobbed, each choked sound tearing at Zhou Ling's heart. She tearfully explained that she had been framed by villains, that everything was just a twist of fate. Although she was now the 9th prince's concubine, her heart had always been with Zhou Ling. Now that her life was difficult, she hoped he could help her. A beauty crying like a pear blossom in the rain, falling into one's arms and pleading weakly. How many men could refuse? Zhou Ling, normally timid and incompetent, suddenly displayed a manly air. He was moved and hugged Zhang Xuelin tightly, gently wiping away her tears. Seeing this, I couldn't bear it longer. I was so angry I kicked the door open and stormed in. Zhou Ling, you've got some nerve. Daring to keep a mistress behind my back. Let me see what shameless vixen dares to seduce my husband. Ah! Isn't this the concubine of Prince Jing? Oh dear. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve, my voice choked with emotion, then turned and ran straight out of the tea house. My cousin chased after me anxiously, his face filled with indignation. Zhao Zhao, my dear sister, don't be angry. I will definitely get justice for you in this matter. Even if she is a prince's concubine, she can't just seduce other people's husbands. I kept my face covered and just ran, not daring to look up. How could I? I was afraid people would see the massive grin on my face. An enraged and jealous Gu Jingyang lost all reason. He ordered Zhou Ling's hand tendons to be cut, making it impossible for him to hold a brush and ending his qualification as an editor at the Hanlin Academy. The emperor had a slightly favorable impression of Zhou Ling, but my cousin seized the opportunity to add fuel to the fire, constantly reporting his misdeeds. In the end, the emperor promptly dismissed him from his post. Gu Jingyang once again became the target of scorn, and even his fiefdom was confiscated. From then on, he had no way of accessing important information and couldn't stop the third prince's usurpation plot in time to save the emperor and claim the merit. This time, that credit belonged to my cousin. The day my cousin was named crown prince was also the day Zhang Xuelin went into labor, giving birth to a baby boy. Because of her troubled mind and emotional distress, she went into premature labor when the baby was only 7 months along. The rumors outside grew even wilder. Everyone was saying the child was Zhou Ling's. I used this opportunity to demand a divorce. Zhou Ling looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow. You're leaving me too. You know perfectly well that Zhang Xuelin and I are innocent. I laughed at his shamelessness. Innocent. Tell me, where is the innocence? When she was still a maid in our manor, you and she would meet secretly in the garden late at night. Is that what you call innocent? She frequently gave you scented sachets and handkerchiefs. Can that be considered innocent? Don't talk to me about so-called soulmates. You are an editor at the Hanlon Academy, and she is a maid who doesn't even know half a character. Is this also a soulmate? The two of you, a man and a woman alone, frequently met in secret in the garden. Who can say for sure that the baby didn't come from back then? Zhou Ling was so angry he flipped the table. His face beat red. If you want to frame me, you don't need to say so much. If you are determined to slander me, then I wouldn't be able to clear my name even if I had 100 mouths. Zhou Ling had no way to explain himself and could only wave his sleeve and furiously berate me. He cursed me for being treacherous and ungrateful for wealth, for being a fair-weather wife. In his heart, my request for a divorce wasn't because of what happened, but simply because he had lost his official position and his future was completely ruined. I remembered very clearly in the original story, when I was sentenced to death by Gu Jingyang, Zhou Ling had the exact same cold, disgusted expression. Not only did he ignore my death, he immediately opened the ancestral hall and struck my name from the family records, not allowing me to be buried in the Zhou family tomb. He even forbade anyone from lighting incense for me. Compared to the original story, this divorce was truly far too merciful to him. So when my cousin stepped in to handle the matter, I made Zhou Ling pay over 10,000 taels of silver in compensation. Zhou Ling was nearly bankrupted, to the point where he had to sell his ancestral home. In the end, he could only shamelessly crawl back to live with his uncle. But his uncle's household was managed by his cousin-in-law, a stingy and harsh woman who fed him the worst dregs every day, treating him even worse than the servants. The Zhou Ling of today was merely trying to survive day by day, without a shred of dignity left. Before the day my cousin ascended the throne, Zhang Shulin came to find me. She gritted her teeth, her voice filled with resentment. This was all you're doing, wasn't it? How can there be such a venomous woman like you in this world? I have no grudge against you, why did you have to harm me? I just remained silent. So this was the gentle and innocent female lead, beaten so badly, yet her first reaction wasn't to fight back but to stand there and ask why. But I had no interest in teaching her how to be a person. Someone like her, who seemed virtuous on the surface, was actually incredibly selfish. She appeared merciful, but in reality, she was just pitifully weak. If the author hadn't forced a golden finger on her, I'm afraid she wouldn't have even been able to step out of the Zhou Manor gate, destined to be a maid for her entire life. Gu Jingyang and the third prince went all out in their rebellion, attempting to usurp the throne. But the situation now was completely different from the original plot. Because Zhang Zelin gave birth earlier than expected and entered the manor under scandalous circumstances, she lost the opportunity to befriend important allies. In the past, many powerful families had helped her, but now, with her reputation in ruins, no one paid her any mind. With no money, no power, and no help, their rebellion naturally failed miserably. All the men in Gu Jingyang's household were executed, and the women were exiled to the north. Zhang Xuelin was no exception. The day she was escorted away, Zhou Ling secretly stole silver from the Zhou family and quietly followed her. It truly was a deep and moving love story. Unfortunately, Zhou Ling's body was already weak, and the north was bone, chillingly cold. It said he died on the road before he even reached the northern city. As for Zhang Xuelin, although her will to live was strong, she was ultimately just a lone woman in a foreign land. Exiled to the north for hard labor, she lived an incredibly harsh life. From a fairy-like beauty, she eventually became a peasant woman with a withered, sorrowful face. The day the news of Zhou Ling's death arrived, my cousin, worried that I would be sad, deliberately summoned me to the palace. I recently selected a group of bodyguards, he said nonchalantly. These men are all quite good. I will bestow them upon you. Then he looked at me and slowly advised, Jiaozhao, there are plenty of men in the world. If this one doesn't work out, just find another. A woman must treat herself well. You shouldn't let yourself suffer for the sake of some empty reputation, you understand. I hadn't even finished listening. My eyes were already captivated by those bodyguards. Each one was tall with long legs. Some had fair skin, others had healthy, wheat-colored skin. All were handsome, with strong physiques and extraordinary temperaments. Seeing that I was still dazed, my cousin sighed helplessly. All right, men, select another, better group, and send them to the princess's manor. I was stunned. There's an even better group. A smile uncontrollably spread across my lips. Stepping out of the imperial palace, I stretched and welcomed the sunset that dyed the entire horizon red. Living a new life, how could I miss out on such a beautiful spring? This tale offers a profound lesson on agency and the subversion of destiny. It demonstrates that one's predetermined role, whether hero or villain, is merely a narrative waiting to be rewritten. True power lies not in superficial virtues or a faded halo, but in sharp intellect, a deep understanding of human psychology, and the courage to act decisively. By deconstructing the world around her and refusing to be a victim of the plot, the protagonist achieves ultimate freedom. It teaches that our greatest strength is the will to seize control of our own story, forging a new ending through cunning and resolve. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.